Offload your current provider and come to Q Streaming. Get access to over 1,000 local and live TV channels and most series and movies found on multiple streaming platforms. Consolidate them all in one place with Q. By supporting Q, you are supporting the kingdom and ministries like ours. You'll unlock earlier access to our podcasts and content exclusive to Q alone. Scan the QR code for more information.
All right, hello and welcome everybody. My name is Jenness White. I am the host of Morning Star Revelation on Q Broadcast, and I'm joined today by Tim Martin, who is the Augusta County Commonwealth's attorney in Virginia. Tim, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And so, Tim, what I wanted to do today is just get your take on a very important amendment and one of the hot topics this election cycle coming up in November, and kind of get your viewpoint from a legal stance on some things that are kind of hidden in the fine print of this amendment that have not been brought to the forefront but should be, because quite frankly it extends well beyond just being pro-life or pro-choice. And so these are things that I think people need to know so that they're informed with knowledge and empowered when they go to the ballot box this November. And so first, I just wanted to start so that when we compare what this amendment will do, can we just start by telling everybody what the current abortion law is in Virginia?
Sure. So in Virginia, it's legal up to 26 weeks of pregnancy, and after that point, it takes 3 medical providers in agreement that it must take place. And so that's what the current state of the law is.
Okay. And so a lot is about to change with this amendment if it were to be pushed through. And we are going to go through the process of where this amendment is and where it's going, because if it continues to go through, it will be part of the state constitution, which looks different because the governor at that point, whoever that might be in 2026, can then not veto it. We need to know what the comparison in it is. And again, this is kind of in the fine print of this amendment. And so I wanted to just go through 3 things that I think kind of make this a bipartisan issue. And even people that identify as being pro-choice, I don't think are going to agree with this. And so I wanted to get your take from a legal stance on this, Tim.
And one thing that I would say is that in some ways, if there were to be fine print, it would be easier. Yeah. But in this case, there isn't actually any fine print. And what you have to do is read between the lines
and interpret
to determine what would actually be allowed. And I feel like what's in between those lines is so wide-ranging that most people would object.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And so we want to just kind of empower everybody with the knowledge of what those things are. And so the first thing definitely makes this a bipartisan issue is that there is no requirement for those 3 medical professionals to perform the abortion potentially. And so, which is very concerning.
No, it's silent altogether as to who would do the procedure. I have difficulty finding the language that is appropriate, but yes, the situation is that this essentially blows the doors off of that and leaves it wide open.
Yeah, so wouldn't be a need for any medical professionals.
That's
the way
absolutely correct.
The way that it's interpreted, or based on what we know, which is not much, but it could be potentially interpreted that there would no longer be that requirement.
Now, I tend to be fairly careful with my language, but in reading this, I think that's how it would be interpreted.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so you said current law says that abortion can be up to 26 weeks, but this potentially also blows the door open to past that, beyond that, to unlimited, and both sides of the aisle, pro-choice and pro-life, were very much against this, and we're very concerned. And so this opens the door for that too, right? We call that unlimited abortion. Basically, there is no stipulation then for the weeks.
And it has this language in it which refers to a compelling state interest. The thing that I find difficult about the amendment as written is that it is incredibly non-specific. And so it would be up to any judge in any particular jurisdiction to make the interpretation of what state interest means or what reproductive freedom means in these other things. And so if you think back to Governor Northam's infamous statement about keeping someone comfortable,
right.
The notion there, at least the plain language, was that he meant after birth, which was incredibly disturbing, I think, to most anyone. I want to extend some grace to him that he couldn't possibly have meant that. Do you know what I mean by that? I know what he said. I remember thinking he can't possibly mean that. He himself was a doctor, and I think is a doctor. It was really hard to believe that that's what he meant in saying that, but the plain language was what it was. And there is, I can say that there's nothing in this that definitively codifies that position as legal going forward. I don't see that anyway. And of course, legal opinions are varied and many, even among supposed experts. But I don't read anything in here that mandates that. However, I don't read anything in here that that prevents it either.
Right. So it's very open to interpretation at that point.
It is incredibly open to interpretation. And
you said it kind of crosses the boundaries then. You were talking about reproductive freedom into other areas. What were you referencing there?
So when I said reproductive freedom, I mean that you read that euphemistic language, and I think that's done intentionally because it can be interpreted in any number of ways. I hear the phrase, and the phrase itself standing on its own is not offensive. However, the implementation of it can be devastatingly offensive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you. And so with this not potentially preventing abortion past 26 weeks, I think this is something that everybody needs to know, because I don't think most people, when they see this abortion amendment come through, they have no idea that it could change that. And like I said, you know, there are a large majority of pro-choice individuals who would not be okay with this, that need to be informed that this could potentially open the door for that.
Well, what I think most people don't know, and they aren't supposed to know every detail of the way the law in Virginia works, but what they don't know is that the Constitution trumps the statutes.
Okay.
So if it's written into the state constitution, the General Assembly can't come along later and make a law that's more restrictive than is permitted by the state constitution. It prescribes that. So going forward, a new General Assembly, a new governor, would be powerless to do it. They'd have to amend the Constitution again, which the process was made difficult from the beginning for the reason that you don't want the General Assembly and the governor's hands tied.
Right. And so just so everybody knows where this is at right now in that process is it just went through the General Assembly. And so this directly is correlated with who we vote in this November. And I believe there's 100 seats up for grabs right now for the House. And so these individuals who we're voting in are going to be the people making the determination next year's General Assembly to put this on the ballot in 2026 to potentially become part of the state constitution. And that's why this is so concerning. So these are some key issues that I think are bipartisan issues that should be at the forefront of people's minds when they go to cast their ballots in November. Tim, and I just wanted to get your take on them because these are things that are open to interpretation for this abortion amendment. And the first is that there is no requirement for medical professionals to perform the abortion, could be one of the interpretations of this. Can you just add to that what you think?
Yes, in reading the amendment itself, I think that that's a likely interpretation. I can't say for sure what any individual person would do, but I think that's a likely interpretation. And the problem is that that's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's just dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous. And I know current law requires 3 professionals. And so this could potentially take that out of the equation altogether, at which point both mom and baby are in, serious dire straits at that point. And so that's something that I think most people don't know, but they should, about this abortion amendment. The second thing was, it's been argued that the amendment would require no parental consent for the abortion in cases where the mom is a minor. And so this is concerning to me because, minors, they can't vote, they can't serve public office, they can't serve in our military for good reason. They're minors, yet they're going to allow them potentially with this new abortion amendment to make a life-altering decision, and the parents would have no idea what is going on.
I will say this, they've already made a life-altering decision. But at that point, having an adult come alongside in part because people who are 16, 15, 17 are not adults, and their brains are not fully formed, and they can't make good decisions. And that certainly applied to me at that age, and I imagine it applied to most everyone who looks back on it in retrospect. And I think that is a very likely interpretation of that amendment. And the problem is you can't change that by making a statute, and I don't think that this allows for that. Well, potentially.
And if you pair this with the last topic we talked about with no medical professionals, then who is looking after the welfare of this minor? That's a huge concern as well.
It is.
So there's multiple different scenarios that could happen here, all of which are very bad, in my opinion. So that's something that I know that should be at the forefront, again, that people need to know. They don't know this, and they need to. The third issue is that there would be immunity from prosecution and penalties for anyone involved in providing any formal assistance in the abortion. And so this opens the door for potentially non-medical professionals assisting with an abortion. And then what else do you foresee here? Is this an accurate interpretation of what could happen, immunity from prosecution?
Yes, I think that is the point that I feel most confident in speaking to in this. It does seem to provide near blanket immunity. And I understand that for the people who wrote this and many of the people to whom the notion of reproductive freedom is important, the thought that you could be prosecuted for seeking an abortion or performing one is offensive. However, there are circumstances in which someone who's not a doctor could perform an abortion and do it in such a careless and gross and reckless manner that it would be a crime. And I can't pursue that here. And I can think of eye-watering scenarios in which every reasonable person would want the bad actor to be prosecuted. There is a very good argument to be made that this would prevent that.
Yeah. And again, these are all topics that are bipartisan in nature, regardless of whether you identify as pro-life or pro-choice. This is where we need to unify together, because I don't think any of the outcomes and situations from those 3 points we just talked about is something anybody in Virginia truly wants at the heart of it. And so...
Well, what we're not debating here is whether abortion should or should not be legal. That is not what this debate is about. This debate is about whether that amendment would be a good thing or a bad thing. And what it prevents is prosecution of criminals who involve themselves in an abortion. It allows really young children to make these decisions, and it is, those are things that I think you would find broad disapproval for.
Yeah, I agree. And again, that's why we wanted to bring these to the forefront today, again, in a call of action and unity for Virginians when they go to cast their ballots this November.
We can argue the abortion matter another time. This shouldn't pass.
Yeah. Hello everybody, it's Jenness White, and I just want to take the time to thank you for watching this very important video. And there's a couple next steps that you can help us with. First, sit down with your delegate or correspond with your delegate and see where they stand on this issue, and then spread that knowledge. The second thing you can do is share this video with everybody you know, with family and friends. Thank you for helping us with this very important mission.